Next, we have our security expert in studio, and today from Security Watch Ghana, his name is Alex Akwe, and we're discussing fire outbreaks and how really what sort of security tips you need for that. Thank you very much for joining us here today.
Thank you for having me.
Again and again. Now, what do you do before a fire?
Yeah, I mean, basically, even though there are a lot of technical definitions for fire, but fire can just be simply put as an uncontrolled burning that can threaten your life, property, family, or anything that is around you. And in preparing for something that has the potential of destroying everything that you have, in fact, the first thing that should come into your mind is having a kind of insurance. And maybe the first insurance you can have is to buy insurance policy with any insurance company. And then the second thing you can do actually is to have systems in place that can mitigate or, reduce the risk of the fire occurring. Some of the basic things you can look at is like getting smoke detectors or heat detectors installed in strategic places in your home. And there is always the issue of where do I put smoke detector and where do I put heat detector. In fact, from their names, one detects smoke and the other detects heat. So basically, smoke detectors are at places where, like, let's take like your corridors, maybe your staircase and stuff like that. And heat detectors can be in your kitchen, your garage, and some of those places, so that when there is an alarm, you can easily sense it. And then another thing you can put in place is to have probably fire extinguisher, which you probably train everybody in the family how to use it, so that in case there is fire and you are not there, anybody at all can put off the fire. Then maybe the third thing you can do is to have a simple plan for your home. We have homes that when there is fire, nobody knows what to do at any particular point. All you need to do is to have a simple structure in place. Tell everybody in the family, when there is fire, this is what we do.
So maybe everybody
does the same thing. You don't need to go calling somebody when there is fire. When you hear that, like, there is this smoke alarm or there is a kind of alarm that is threatening, all you need to do is to run to this room or run through this exit, do this, do that, do that. Maybe you have...
I think the exit sounds better than run to this room. I don't want to get trapped anywhere.
Well, it depends. For example, when you are living, let's say, on a story building.
Climb down the stairs.
Of course, and the fire is on the staircase. What do you do?
Ooh, jumping out the window.
Yeah, so
to a tree.
One way to get out in such a scenario is to probably have maybe a kind of escape ladder in place. You see that some of the tall buildings, there are some metal ladders behind the building that you can pull and climb up and all those things. They are all means of escape. In terms of fire or anything, you can just, instead of running to the staircase, you better find another route, because that is where the fire actually is. So basically.
Okay, so I do know that you do not. First of all, I want to go back to the extinguisher. I have had training about this also. We actually had the fire service come into ETV and train all the staff. And so I have a bit of knowledge, and I do know that they also expire. You have to renew them every once in a while. So you can't have a fire extinguisher there for the past 10 years or 5 years and think it's okay and teach everybody, and then you try and nothing works.
Yeah, of course, you're right. That is why, even when you have put like the basic structures in place, it is recommended that you get the fire service or an expert to come and look at what you've done and commend it. You see, for example, talking about smoke detector and heat detectors, the principle is that you must at least clean it once a month.
Change the
batteries periodically, and of course, if it's been there for a while, after 10 years, even if nothing has happened, you just need to replace it.
Yeah, and I do know also with as that one, in any tall building that has an elevator, it tells you not to get on there in case there's a fire. Get inside. So how else can one escape a fire?
Good. Apart from not getting into the elevator, because it will definitely shut down and you might be locked in. Now, the best route to use is to use the staircase. In case there is an emergency, try and use the staircase. And of course, there should always be enough signage, like signs to point you. You know, when you enter into a facility, there is an arrow showing you when you pass this place, you are exiting, you are doing that. In fact, when there is fire, all you need to do at that particular moment, you can't think because you are like between life and death.
Yeah.
You are just imagining what you do. So the only thing that should be in your mind is to follow the light.
Yeah.
But the issue is that when the fire is on the way of the light, like maybe if the fire happens to be across like the exit path, then one of the best approaches to use is to return back to your office or your room and lock the door. And maybe like hang, if you are in a story building, you can hang maybe your shirt, your clothes, something to give sign.
On the ground as well, because of all the smoke and the heat that rises. You should be on ground.
Yes, I mean that is when you are escaping. You must always be at a lower height. The reason is that, you know, smoke always rises. When we're talking about density, air is denser than smoke, so smoke will always rise. So what you have to do is that when you go down, you can see clearer because the smoke there will be lower. And apart from seeing clearer, heat also rises. So it means down there less heat. And one thing that you can also do is to maybe have 1 or 2 torchlights
around
at strategic places. You know where it is. So when you pick it, it can help you pass
with the
through.
Smoke is hard to even see with the torchlight.
Yes, you see, but when you are down, it's clearer.
It's clearer.
It's clearer because the smoke will, no matter what, will always be getting.
Now, in the interest of time, if your say fridge or an electrical outlet is the one that's causing the fire, do you pour water on it?
You see, when the source, we normally don't recommend putting off fire with water.
Okay.
Because that is why you need to have a kind of extinguisher around to use to put it off. But the first thing you do when you notice a kind of electrical problem is to put off the main source of the...
Say you can't get to it. I know that you do not, with electricity and water is no. Sand, right? You can use sand if there's sand nearby. I mean, when there's no extinguisher around or something.
Yes, at times also, what you can do is we have fire mats that you can just use to cover the source and it will put off the fire.
But the average person does not have a fire mat.
Well, if you don't have all of this, I mean, when this kind of fire takes place, it's always at a spot.
Okay.
It's always at a spot. So as much as possible, you try to use something that, let me say, is not inflammable.
Okay.
I don't know what you might have at the moment, but I mean, you should be able to tell that this thing will not, you know, be inflammable at that particular. You can even use Gary if you have Gary.
Good one. Now, in the interest of time, can you just tell us exactly what to do before leaving your house for safety, very quickly for us?
Yes, before leaving your house, what you really have to do is to make sure that if you have smoke and fire detectors in place, you should make sure that you have set them up and they are working properly. And you know, when you are using the in-house, the battery type, the problem is that you might not be able to even, some of them, their alarm strength cannot even go beyond the confines of the home unless you are within before you can hear it. So at times it's also recommended to have a kind of intruder system that is linked to the fire and smoke detectors, so that when there is fire and you are not even home, this system can send you prompts in the form of message, can call your phone,
text message or something,
you know, and all those other stuff.
All right, thank you so much, Alex Akwe. He will be with us again next week to give us more tips. But right now, we'll put the rest of the tips that he has onto our Facebook, facebook.com/ETV Awake. All right, so get on to Facebook to find out more about some of these health tips. These security tips. Right now, though, I am taking you to the health tips. That's why it's on my mind. So let's take on to our health tips now.